You will all have a little thing now saying OK or leave meeting. If you could just click on OK if you're happy for this to be recorded. The purpose of recording it is to, we will be posting it on our YouTube page and our web page for all of those people who couldn't attend, in particular, perhaps the working parents who we know will be sat in meetings currently. So purpose of today, I will go through the AGM report. Everybody should have had a copy of the AGM report ahead of this meeting. What I'm not going to do is do a slow drag of all that text. I've actually put some PowerPoint presentation around it to make it a little bit more visual, so you don't all fall asleep whilst you're drinking your coffee and eating your cake. Then Joe is going to take us through the PCF survey results. Again, just doing a bit more of an analysis about what's come out of the results, and then we'll also talk about what we're going to do with the results, because that's probably the most important part. And then we have Helen Brackenbury and Debbie Edwards, who are going to look at the survey results and our recommendations and talk about how they're going to help implement some of those and what the processes are going forward. I'd also just like to welcome Debbie. Debbie is on the call this morning, so thanks for being here for all of it. It's great that you can hear you know, some of the challenges that we've faced over the last 12 months and actually be part of this process, so thank you. And I'd also like to welcome Lisa from Contact. She's also going to be doing a little bit about how Contact, which is a national charity, which we'll talk about, how the PCF actually fit into that overall process. So thank you very much indeed, Lisa, for taking the time to come on the call today. Right. Okay, without further ado then, housekeeping. I'll just remind for anybody, if they're late arrivers, it is being recorded. It's going on the YouTube channel, and our we will put a link on Facebook and all of our other socials. Please keep your cameras off for that purpose and also on mute, just in case you get an Amazon delivery and your dog goes nuts. If you wouldn't mind keeping it on mute, then that would be great. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to use the chat function. We will be monitoring the chat function, and Debbie and Helen have also had questions that you've asked ahead of the event. They've got those and we'll be answering those as well when it comes to their slot. But if there are any questions that you got, just feel free to add them into the chat and we will pick them up as we go along. Okay, moving on, she says. Okay, well, I think it's safe to say that it has actually been a really difficult year, this last 12 months. It's been difficult for a number of reasons. It's been difficult from a lot of the PCF reps' personal perspective. We've all had a lot going on in our personal lives with our children with SEND, trying to navigate what is a broken system. But despite those challenges, it's also been a very successful year in a number of different ways. So we have delivered against the action plan that we said that we were going to do this time last year. We've seen continued growth. So we're now at over 700 members, which is fantastic. We still know that we've got an awful lot of growth to go through. But we're proud of the reach that we have, and they're just the ones that are registered on our database. Our reach is greater than that, and I'm going to talk about the strength of that network as I go through the report and the presentation. We are delighted that the borough as a whole has become a SEND inclusive borough. That's a really positive thing to take away from this year, because it means, you know, your voices have been amplified. But the biggest achievement this year, by far, has been capturing your voices in a structured mechanism, which is the PCF survey. I want to thank everybody up front for taking the time to fill in what was quite a long and lengthy survey, but the results and the detail around that is now going to give us a springboard for the future. It's going to give us a benchmark for the future, and we're going to talk a lot around that today, about how your voices through that survey are have and will be amplified. Okay, moving on. Right, I'm going to ask Lisa if she wouldn't very much mind switching on her camera and introducing herself and just talking through where we fit into the national picture. So over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Julie. So my name's Lisa Aldred and I'm Parent Carer Participation Advisor at the charity Contact. Contact's a national charity that supports families of children with disabilities. And as part of our work, so my team, the Parent Participation Team, we administer the Department for Education Parent Participation Grant for Parent Care Forums. So every area in England, every local authority area has the opportunity to apply for a parent participation grant from the Department for Education. And that's where you get your local parent carer forum. So Contact administer that grant, support with the developing of forums and support forums through the work that they do. And then on the other side of that, we work in very close partnership with the national network of parent care forums. So every parent care forum is a member of the national network. I don't know if you're going to touch on how that works later, Julie. Yes, so I'm not going into that too much. But there's around 152, it is changing occasionally, but there's around 152 forums in the country that are part of that network that leads to over 100,000 voices feeding in nationally, working with government. So at the core of everything, so we have a regional representative, which is Kath Bromfield. She couldn't be here today, but she represents the Northwest region. And so local forums will feed up. There's 23 forums in the Northwest area, and they feed up through their representative, Kath Bromfield, to the national network on so all the voices that get fed in locally also get fed in regionally and nationally. And together we've got a really strong commitment to embedding co-production locally, regionally and nationally. So on a local level, sometimes it can feel like you're on your own, but it's not. It's a much bigger network that ultimately has a strong voice when people work together. Is there anything else you want me to cover around?
I'll just move on to that one. I think you probably covered most of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So the next bit is stay on, Lisa. Don't go for now. Keep your camera on in case I need to refer back to you. So that's a picture of my lad Josh, for those of you who don't know. And the reason that he's there is because he is at the centre, and as every single one of your children is at the centre of what we do. So it seems really big. It seems like, you know, from what Lisa's saying, you know, how can Josh's voice actually be represented in Parliament? And this is one of the ways that it can happen. We get the money from the Department for Education. We hear what Josh and your kids and you have to say. We let the National Network of Parent Carer for us know, and Contact know, and they do the campaigning and the co-production alongside those government ministers. And how we get those voices is through working alongside and in partnership with the ICBs. I'm going to talk to you about what an ICB is in a minute as well. So the NHS, and also alongside CWaC, so education and social care. And Josh and all the other children are at the centre of that. And that gives you an idea of where the PCF Cheshire West fits into the overall national structure. You know, we feedback, this report has gone to Lisa and Kath already, so they've got an idea about what's happening on the ground here. They've seen our survey, they know what's happening, and we're also part of that Northwest network as well. So it's not just us sat here on our own in the study. We're far bigger than that, and we've got far broader reach than that. Okay, so I'm gonna have to move things around on my screen because I can't see what I'm doing now. Okay, so what do we do? We represent families of children with SEND. And that doesn't mean to say that they have to have an education and healthcare plan, by the way, guys. That's all children with SEND that we represent across the borough. We're led by parent volunteers, and we are governed by a steering group where the parent volunteers sit and also the professionals sit. We signpost families to the relevant third sector organisations. And again, I'm going to touch on that a little bit about how we work with our third sector or charities, for want of a better phrase. But we also work in partnership with our professionals to make sure that that co-production work actually takes place. A word, by the way, that is bandied around a lot, and not many people know what real true co-production looks like. So that's something that we're going to focus on over the next 12 months. What we don't do, we're not a support group. So we're not one of the charities. We don't organise Saturday events for parents to get together. And we're not a support group in that traditional sense. However, through the work that we do support families. And there are peer support opportunities. So people do meet other parents. We have a number of coffee events. We have some WhatsApp groups, and parents do support each other. But that's a happy byproduct of what we do. It's not something that the core of what we do. We do not, and I'm repeating, we do not work for the local authority. There is some misinformation out there that we're not independent and that we work for the local authority. I want to say, not true. We are independent. We are parents who are supporting our own children, and we are totally and utterly independent. And that is something that the PCS have to be nationally. So, you know, if any of you out there are unsure about our role and where we fit in and whether or not we're truly independent, then please just get in contact with us. We're very accessible. You can get us via WhatsApp or Facebook or email us. And please do ask, because when misinformation goes out there about independence, our fear is that parents are put off. There isn't that much support out there for parents in similar positions, and we really don't want that to be the case. So we are independent, we continue to be independent, and I think any of the professionals who may be on the call or who have worked with us will echo that we can be a gigantic pain in their arse because we are independent, and that's what our job is there to be. But what we also can't do is we can't campaign. You know, this is something, again, that is part of the grant that we get through from the Department for Education. We're not allowed to campaign. Department for Education give us a 17,500 quid a year, and they ask us, you know, not to campaign. They ask us to co-produce, to sit with our professional partners and make sure that we are working together to find those solutions. And that's written in gold, really. Okay. So money in and money out. You've all got the detailed breakdown in the annual report that you've got. Thanks, Lisa. You can switch your camera off now. I might come back to you if I need you, but thanks ever so much for being there. So money in and money out. So as I say, we get £17,500 a year from the government and or the Department for Education. And last year we spent £17,406. Whoa, that was close, wasn't it? So we make sure that we are very tightly managing the budget that we have. And that's the majority of that money is spent on administrative support and also running of the forums. You'll have a breakdown in your report that's sent through to you all ahead of the event, exactly how much was spent on what. But it's tight. It's tight. So we have to be, you know, we have to be careful about how we spend our scarce resources and make sure that we're spending it on the things that you want us to spend it on. So making sure that we're spending it on the forums, Zoom, and all those other kind of monetary values that we have to adhere to. So moving on. So what are the roles within the PCF here in Cheshire West? Because every PCF is slightly different. And this is how we choose to organise it here within Cheshire West and Chester. So we kind of have layers of different roles to try and attract as many parents as possible, because we all know, A, it's volunteer, and B, many of us work, and C, we're all parents of kids with SEND. So we've got appointments and EHCPs and SEND reviews and whatever. So we know it's busy. What we're quite proud of is our representation. Although I'm probably the oldest that sits on the steering group, you know, I rattle with my HRT. We do have younger members who are representative of that early age group, so the 0 to 5s. And we also have a really broad cross section of disabilities that we represent. So I represent Down syndrome. We also have parents who represent, obviously we've got autism representation. We have cerebral palsy, we have global development delay, we have attachment disorders, that we have a whole cross section of parents who are on that steering group who represent the whole gamut of disabilities within the borough. We're always looking for more, by the way, but to become a member of our CWaC steering group, you need to go on the training that Lisa's team offers. And there's also a training that takes place within the borough to navigate the SEND system that is unique to Cheshire West and Chester. So everybody who sits on that steering group has been through that training process. We also have a parent management group. And again, this is kind of like the guts of what we do. This is, you know, all those people that sit on work streams. It's making sure who's going to turn up at what meeting, who's going to attend what coffee event. It's the real heart of what it is that we do. And we have a number of people who are representative on there. I think we've got about 10 at the moment, 10 parents at the moment. You don't have to have been on that training. But the majority of people who have sat on that parent management group do go through that training so that they can help navigate people as well. But they might not want to have the commitment to actually be on the full steering group. So it gives you flexibility to do both. We also have parents who are just parent voices, you know, so we have parents who have got a particular interest in making sure, for argument's sake, that parks are accessible for our families. So they might just want to sit on work streams that are related to that. We also have parents who just sit on the work streams for the wraparound care. They're not necessarily a member of the parent management group and they don't sit on the steering group, but they have got a real interest and their voices need to be heard. And that's the route and opportunity they have to do that. We also have our school reps, of which we've got 28 of them across the whole of the borough. Every special school and as well as a number of mainstream settings as well. We need to increase that number. We want to get that wider. And the way that we, so guys, if you're interested in becoming a school rep, then that'd be brilliant. It's kind of like a twofold role. It's about feeding up about issues that are there on the ground in your school that you're hearing on a day-to-day basis. And it's also about sharing information, PCF information. So if there's anybody out there who's interested in becoming up any of these roles, then please do let us know. We are governed. We have a strict code of conduct that everybody has to follow. And obviously we have our constitution and our government governance structure that we have to adhere to. So if you do want to join us, please get in touch and we will give you all the relevant information and post you to training that we're going to be doing going forward. Okay. So what are the achievements for this academic year? And we do run on an academic year basis, by the way, guys. So the survey, I'm only going to touch on that now because we've got a section in the agenda to go through that. But that was and took a significant amount of work, and you'll see why when you see the detailed analysis. Again, all of you should have been sent copies ahead of the meeting. So, thank you for that. We did our coffee events this year, which was different to previous years. And we're going to build on that because they worked really well. It gave people an opportunity to kind of ask questions in a smaller environment. We partnered with two of our charity partners, so Down Syndrome Cheshire, who are based in Northwich, to capture that side of the borough, and also Space over in Chester. And they ran these monthly sessions for us. We need to brand them a little bit better so that people realise they're actually PCF sessions. But we had a number of different speakers come along, whether or not it was HSBC came to talk about accessible banking. We had people coming to talk from the health service about advocacy. So there's lots and lots of different topics that took place. And, they were successful. So we will be doing them again in the future. We've grown in lots of different ways. We've grown in terms of membership. So as I said earlier, we're at over 700 now, which is fantastic. Our reach has grown in terms of our social media. So we hit over 34,000 reach over this last 12-month period. And we've had over 10,000 hits on our website. So, we want that to grow. And we know that social media is the way that we can actually do and deliver that. And we're looking at how differently we can do that next year to increase the communication and spread the word about what it is that we're doing. This next bit is the important bit with everything that we do, which is building solid relationships and for lasting success. So working with people to make sure that we can get the changes that you guys need. And, you know, there's been some important changes that have taken place over the last 12 months. One is that there's been a change of cabinet member within the CWaC council. So we have a new counsellor for children, a gentleman called Adam Langham, and we've been working quite closely with him about some of the issues and concerns that have been raised by you guys and by us. There's also been a change in how the NHS has been structured. It's taken some time to filter down, but over the last 12-month period, there is something now called the ICB, which is the Integrated Care Board. And there is now a Cheshire and Merseyside ICB, where there are 9 places, of which Cheshire West is one of them, Cheshire East is another one, Holton, etc. All of which the 9 PCFs are represented on that board. And that's taken a lot of time to try and work out and establish how, as a group, we're going to move forward for the future to make sure there's commonality across the whole of Cheshire and Merseyside. So how does the whole of Cheshire and Merseyside manage the autism pathway, for instance? What's the best practice that we can use across the whole of the patch? And it's about embedding what we do in Cheshire West at that level, that higher level, to make sure our voices are being heard and we can learn from best practice. But you can imagine the amount of time and effort it's taken to try and get that established. But we're there and we're doing it and we're represented. So, you know, we're hoping that 2024-25 we'll start to see some more changes take place there, where we've actually impacted here on the ground. We've become a SEND inclusive borough, and Lucy represented us. Lucy, the vice chair, represented us at the cabinet meeting in, I think it was May, just before the election was announced, actually. So that was fantastic, that there is a commitment at the highest level that Cheshire West and Cheshire will be a SEND inclusive borough. I mean, that's enormous. So let's see how that can work in practice. And we're not going to be able to do some of that detailed work until after tomorrow with some of the members of the cabinet. Okay. So this I'm really proud of. This is something that we started off in the last 18-month period, which is about setting up our third sector network. These are just an idea about some of the charities that we work with. So what the PCF do is we facilitate a meeting between all of these fabulous charities on a termly basis to make sure that we can get economies of scale. So, you know, it's a joint work that can be happening to make it better for families, because families who come to Down Syndrome Cheshire will also go to Tiny Steps, will also go to Space, will also go to Live. So we have shared families. And so what is it that we can do as a group that can help support those families? It's also another fantastic opportunity to hear parents' voices and to hear children's voices. Some parents who attend all of these fabulous charities may not be registered with Parent Carer Forum, but because they are registered with Live or with Disabilities Positive or with Tiny Steps, we can hear their voices. These guys can tell us what the real issues are on the ground for them, and they are reaching pretty much everybody in the county. So it's really important that this network continues. And what we've said that we're going to do next academic year is increase the frequency of that. And we're also a member of the Cheshire West Voluntary Action. Our survey results have gone through to those guys. They're working at the highest level to influence change. And again, one of our action points for next year is to build on that relationship, because that's new this year. So we want to make sure that we can be more involved in that, and it's about capacity, and hopefully we'll have greater capacity next year. So yeah, okay. We recognise as well that there's a lot of development that needs to happen within the PCF. What we do every year is we feedback, we look internally as a group about what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and even better if. we know that things need to change and things need to be different. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our steering group structure and make sure that we review who sits on it, how the governance works, whether or not it's appropriate to, the frequency of it. We have also looked internally about some of the things that we're doing, and we've decided that we need to be better at some certain aspects, which is about feeding back about the work streams that we sit on. So we're going to do regular blogs on social media to tell people, what the actions that are coming out of certain meetings. So again, if you see anything that you're interested in as a result of those blogs and you want to take part of, then get in contact. But what we did do, we asked our 28 school reps and our other reps as well about what are the 3 words. I asked everybody, please give me 3 words that you think reflect what the PCF stand for. And we put it in a little vision statement, and I put it in here for you in a little bit of a word cloud. So respectful, understanding, compassionate, inclusive, driven, independent, professional. These are the words that the reps, school reps across the borough feel that are the best words to actually represent what it is that they do. And this is for my reps who are on the call. It's been a tough year. It has been a tough year. And, I just want to remind you guys that these are some of the words and some of the feedback that we've had from the parents in the PCF survey. They think, ironically, that we're a same bunch of parents. Now, we know different, but that's okay, that we try and get the views across of those families who wish to remain private. And that's a really important statement that one of the parents has made there. We can speak on behalf of parents who want to maintain a relationship with the LA or with their school or whatever else. We can play that role and help them with their privacy. So I'm going to leave that there for you. The bit that's in red is the bit that I want to kind of highlight to you. Represents views, but doesn't seem to change anything. I think that's true to a certain degree. I think there has been some of that. And I think now is the opportunity to hit the reset button and really start to drive through some of that change. And we have to remember what's in our gift and what isn't in our gift. What's in our gift is making sure that we bring professionals to the party so you guys can ask them questions like we are doing today and like we have done in forums over the last 12 months. What's also in our gift is being able to share information with you guys and bringing you together as a set of parent carers. What's not in our gift is being able to give more money, make the national backdrop any better. It's not in our gift to be able to manage team members or do whatever else. That isn't within our gift. So we just have to remember as well what we can achieve and what we can't achieve. Okay. So with all that in mind, I am going to move on to what we are planning on doing for the next academic year. So first and foremost, highest priority for us, which is why we've got Debbie and Helen here as well, is to talk about the implementation of the PCF survey results. So looking at hit the reset button on that co-production strategy and see how we feed in the survey results into that. And how we feed it in is by having some of our survey results written into the accountability and scrutiny process within the borough. And we've got agreement and commitment that we're going to do that. We just now need to work out which bits we're going to put in and what the process is going to be. We're at the starting point of that. There is a big project out there that NHS England have commissioned, which is called, you might have heard it referred to as a PINS project. So it's Partnership for Inclusion of Neurodiversity within Schools, of which there are 4 schools within Cheshire West and Chester who we are piloting this programme with. And the PCF have a big role to play, both regionally and nationally. Sorry, there's a fly around. And Vanessa is going to lead on that for us. You guys will probably know Vanessa. She's been part of the forum for a number of years. So it's a big piece of work that she's going to lead on for us. We're hoping to run the volunteer training again. So that's 6-week borough council training, which will mean commitment from a number of different professionals within within CWaC to be able to deliver that training. so that we can have more members, new members on our steering group and in our parent management group. We're really keen to make sure that we broaden our horizon and make sure we get new reps. Our annual events. So we ran a survey with a poll, and we've asked you all to come and let us know what you want next year. It's not just our ideas, obviously it's what you need to know. Mental health, not unsurprisingly, was one that came up. So we will run an in-person forum on mental health, and we'll have a number of different aspects to that. So we'll also have about parents' mental health and how we can help support you and get the right charities along to help run a session. Preparation for adulthood. This came out of our forum survey as well. That's a big deal. We need to make sure that we work with the local authority to try and make sure we re-establish what the forum that they used to run, and we're going to work in collaboration with those guys so that we can run a bigger event than we managed to achieve this year. And then something that's come out with is a neurodevelopment specific survey. So that forum. So that's something that we're going to look to making sure we get all the specialists along about the pathway, about some of the autism teams that sit within the local authority. So we'll start, now that we know what you want, we'll start crafting something together and put one of those forums on. In terms of where the forums are going to be located, again, we're going to spread them across the borough to make sure that they are accessible for as many people as possible. We know that not everybody can make the in-person forums because of work commitments and location and whatever else. So we will continue to run our online sessions. We've had a suggestion, which is a brilliant suggestion, to have the mock EHC panel. And we thought the best way that we could do that is actually doing it online. Unless people tell us that's not going to work, but I think that's how they run it. So we're gonna look to do an online one. Transition pathways, so that's early years and also from year 5 to year 7. Do some pathways on that. We'll obviously have our AGM, and we've got a save the date one, and that's feedback from our professionals and also feedback from you guys. Is that we don't necessarily know July the 3rd. What might be coming up, what issues might be arising. So let's have a floating online forum, so that if there is something specific that we need to feed back to you on, it could be about the co-production strategy, for instance, it could be about the progress of the PINS project. So we're going to have a floating save the date AGM without any specific topics at the moment, so that we can fill that in as and when the need comes. So the next stages for all of that is we'll get the flyers together and we'll make sure that we publish it on social media. We will continue to do the coffee events, and we're going to strengthen those this year. So again, the third sector have asked for a specific one. So we're going to host one where just all of those third sector come, so you guys can come and meet everybody that was on all those logos that were on that previous slide, and you can see what support you can get from outside, the local authority, but from the charity sector. We're going to have one to actually navigate the early years. We'll get the most relevant speakers to come along and talk to you about that. We thought we would also have a health live well event. So get all the people who support you in the health arena. So it could be the continence, it could be any of the therapies, speech therapy, physiotherapy, OT, sensory OT. We're going to get one of those set up where you can actually book a session with those therapists and with those people, so that if you've got any specific personal questions that you haven't been able to get answers to, that those guys will come along. Mental capacity, what happens when you make a decision at 18? And the reason that's going to be on a coffee event as well as a transition event is because there's lots of general questions that we found, personal questions that came out of that, which people wouldn't necessarily answer in a big forum scenario. Transitions, let's look at pathways. And then the IAS team have very kindly agreed to run 2 coffee events for us as well, to look at the EHC process within Cheshire West and Chester. So talk about the EHCP plans in terms of the legal obligations, your role as a parent, and just to be able to understand it from a parent's perspective. We know from feedback that is something that you need empowering in, especially if you're the early part of the journey. So thank you very much to the IAS team for helping us and supporting us in that. Other training we're going to do, we ran some training last year. We got a SEND lawyer to come and do some training, and you told us that was really useful. So we're going to look at the budget and see if we can do that again. You've also given us some feedback that you'd like some positive behaviour training, autism of girls, sensory, PDA. We're going to look into doing that as well. And then the final bit that you told us that you wanted training on was some adolescence training. So we're going to seek out some providers and see whether or not we can run some of those sessions for you. Depending on the providers, will be depending on whether or not they're in person or online. We know that the legislation, EHCP and SEND framework, it's not just EHCP, I should have expanded on that, will be for everybody. It'll be for everybody, but it'll also be online, in person. Oh, I need to stop talking now, don't I? I'm boring myself. Anyway, so that will be for in person, probably at Down Syndrome Cheshire again, because it's got a room that they're prepared to loan us for free and it fits enough people in. So we will put all the dates out for that. Okay. Moving on, constitutional wise, we vote biannually. So this isn't actually a voting year this year, but I wanted to remind you of who's in what position and to also remind you of some changes. So I'm the chair. I was doing a co-chair role this year with Vanessa, and thank you, Vanessa, so much for doing that. But because the PINS project has kicked off, she's going to be leading on that. So she's stepping down as co-chair and leading on that. We have Vice Chair Lucy, and then Sarah, who is the glue that keeps us all together, is continuing as the secretary and treasurer. So the role of ensuring that we are keeping on to that very tight budget and making sure that all the minutes and we're in the right place and doing what we're supposed to be doing in that secretariat role as well. So those will be remaining. We'd like to do a massive shout out to Annika. For those of you who know Annika, Annika has been on our steering group now for 5 years, and she's stepping away. She's got other commitments and responsibilities and family life changes. So we really would like to thank Annika for all the time and effort that she's put into the forum over the last 12-month period. Okay, so in conclusion, it's time to hit the reset button. It's time to look at that co-production strategy and rework it. Relook at it. There's been lots of change of personnel over the last 5-year period, 6-year period since it was last written, and let's get woven into that process a new our survey results. Let's get those voices of our parents woven into that new strategy and that new structure, so that we can make sure that your voices are being heard, they're accountable, and we've got some movement. It's not going to be easy. It's been a challenge and it's going to continue to be a challenge. We're under no illusion that it's going to be anything different than that. It's going to be tough. Tough to get all the professionals together, tough to get the commitment to make sure that it's a strategy that's worthwhile. There's no point doing it. And it's going to take time. So, it doesn't mean to say that all the other work stops, but it does mean to say that, let's be realistic in terms of how long it's going to take to make these changes and to make sure that we embed some of the things that we need to embed. Okay, and thank you. The last thank you goes out to everybody, to every single one of you who has been to a coffee event, who's been to a forum, who has been to who's shared any of our posts or taken the time to actually fill in the survey results. I'm hoping you've got an idea about how that's all going to work and how your voices feed in both locally and nationally. And without you taking the time and sharing your opinions and your stories, we wouldn't be here. So, thank you for trusting us with that. And a big shout out to my reps as well. Thank you very, very much indeed for all your hard work and commitment over the last 12 months and beyond. Because it doesn't go unnoticed about how much time and commitment you put in your own time to make sure that everybody else's voices are heard. You do it selflessly, you do it in the background. People have got no idea how much effort you put in, but I do, and I'm very, very grateful. So thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate it. Okay, I am now going to hand over to the wonderful Jo. But before I do, are there any questions in the chat that that people have raised? Anything in there, Sarah, that I need to see?
Yes,
Anyone?
we've got 2 questions in the chat, Jules. Can you see the chat?
No. Can you read it out for me, Luce?
Yes. But other PCFs in England have challenge in their description of what they do and their role. Why does CWaC PCF not have this in theirs? As it's very clear that the current comfortable relationship isn't working.
Okay, I think challenge is what we do. Challenge doesn't mean to say that we have to be aggressive. Challenge means that we have to be in the room. We have to challenge. We have to ask the questions, and we do. I'm sorry if you think that that isn't working. Obviously, we're going to disagree, but I can say with my hand on my heart that we do challenge, and we continue to challenge. So, you know, what I would applaud you to do is if you'd like to come and join us and have your voice in that to make sure that you're part of the team that challenges too, then we'd really love to hear from you. Please email us and make sure that you become part of that challenge too, and you can be part of that process.
And a follow-up question from parents saying, sadly, it doesn't matter how much you reorganise the PCF groups, you don't hold the LA to account or challenge them, and local authority are not interested in changing, being more effective, meeting statutory duties timeframes. It's not going to make a difference. Saying you are going to be send inclusive borough means nothing. We need to see it, as I'm afraid I've lost all trust in the current organisation.
Okay, well, I think the send inclusive borough, we're just going to have to wait and see. I think it's too early to call about whether or not it's going to make a difference or not. I think it's too early to say whether or not having the scrutiny process, making sure that our voices are heard in the scrutiny process, which is a step forward to where we've been in the past, whether it's going to work or not. I do agree with you that we aren't in a good current state of affairs, you know, and I think that the local authority would also agree that we're not in a good current state of affairs. And we do have to hit that reset button, and we do have to make a difference in terms of what we do and how we change things and how accountable people are. So I think that is what we're going to do going forward. And those are the things that we want to make sure are written and woven into the next stages of the co-production strategy. I think that's very clear in the results of the survey that this hasn't been working. It's been really difficult for every local authority, and it's been difficult for every PCF. Lisa, are you still on the call? Can you talk about nationally about, you know, how other PCFs are finding things as well?
Yeah, I think something important to recognise is that forums do challenge, but are not responsible for the changes that do or do not happen. So all forums can do is represent the collective parent carer voice in their area and take that to the strategic boards, can offer solutions and work with the partners and give that challenge. But if the change doesn't happen, that is not down to the fact that the PCF are not challenging. It just has to be representing the voice on the board, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're holding a mirror up and making local authority and the ICB as accountable as we possibly can by raising those voices, but by not being at the top table and by not having our voices represented at all, that would be the wrong way forward. So,
and I would say nationally, so I work with many forums across the North West, Yorkshire and Humber, and our team work across the country. And where forums are trying to work in partnership and co-production, you know, it's difficult nationally. And when we come to talking about timeframes and everything else, that it's really dire across the country. But where forums are working in partnership and trying to be solution focused, there are more meaningful outcomes for families. And where that relationship breaks down completely, then the parents don't get the opportunity to have that voice. So challenge comes in different ways, but the forum are not ultimately responsible for the change that happens from that.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Lucy, any more questions?
That's it.
Okay, brilliant. Please do feel free to ask any more questions along the way. If I could now hand over to Jo, we can do a double if you need us to, Jo. But Jo, if you could take us through the summary of the survey, and then we'll get Debbie and Helen to talk about how they're going to implement the recommendations from the survey. Thanks, Jo.
Are you doing the slides?
Yeah, just tell me when you need me to move them on.
Okay, thank you. Right, so just to say initially, all this is on the PCF website. So the full survey, the questions, the full report, and then the summary report are all there to read through and download, so you can access at any time. So this is just a quick overview. So our survey captured the experiences of 369 children and young people with SEND in the area, covering all ages and all areas of the local authority, and a wide range of different needs and disabilities. We managed to gather the experiences of those in mainstream and special provision, and also the voices of those that weren't attending any educational setting. So that's just a quick snapshot of the demographics.
Sorry.
No, that's right. From the survey responses, we have our themes to help plan for the next academic year. So there's the themes that came out were communication, EHCP process, transition to adulthood, access to services, which is the eligibility being a big issue, many parents and carers, and the waiting times to access services, and also the emotional toll this has on families. Now, the positive feedback from the survey was professionals, services and support networks that have made a positive difference to some families. So they were our key themes that came out. Next slide. Yeah, so data split. We compared the numbers on the same survey questions from 2022. So as you can see here on questions 24 and 26, so we could just see what change has happened in certain areas and with certain services, and if that's been, positive or negative. We also looked at which particular services are people struggling to access and where families are going for support. That's just some of the questions we asked about. And we also drilled down into the data to get a better understanding from your answers about what's working well and what's working not so well. So next slide, Jules. On this one, we split the data to get a better profile of specific service areas. So on question 11, for example, education, health and social care, we split that into age groups to see if there are any patterns we needed to focus on. For example, if you see here, like the number of children's needs met at 5 to 11 years in education was a higher percentage than needs being met at 12 to 16. Whereas it was the other way around, percentages wise with health, the needs met were higher in the 12 to 16s. So it was just comparing across other questions, and from doing this data split and drilling down more, we were able to identify more themes and profiles. Question 12 was a new question added for 2024 survey, and that identified the gaps in services for respite and childcare, but also what's working well.
Sorry.
We backed it all up with comments that you've provided, and we were able to see why some services weren't meeting need. For example, who's eligible and barriers to accessing services. So there were comments regarding short breaks and direct payments. Today it wasn't necessarily the quality of those services on offer, but accessing them. And that meant they weren't meeting needs. So question 13, we put that together in a graph to see each service at a glance, and the number of parent carers who felt the child or young person's needs were being met by those health services, and we're able to compare it with 2 years ago. And on this question, there weren't really any significant changes in the data. But if we need to, and if any of those specific services ask us to, we can split this further to look at specific services across postcode, diagnosis, age, etc., or even the comments attached to these responsive, to see if it's something to do with even, for example, transport accessing these services, or if it's just waiting times, etc. So we've got a lot of extra data there that we can use to understand exactly why some services aren't meeting need as much as others.
And this is the key bit to it all, really, isn't it? I mean, the summary is great,
Yeah.
but it's this in-depth, detailed data now that we've got for like a 2-year period,
Yeah.
that we can then start using in that whole accountability process. So, you know, for argument's sake, just because this one's up here, we could put some of the measures in that we expect to see improvement between the strongly agrees and agrees in private therapies and services written into that kind of process, and see whether or not it's shifted. We for the next time we run it in 2026, you know, we need to do it biannually to give an opportunity to actually affect that change between now and then. So that's what we're going to be, that's the next stage of this process. It's pulling all this together, but now it's like feeding all of this data, the ones that we think are important and are a priority, into the whole of the governance and the scrutiny kind of process, really, because this is such good data, and we can split it in lots of different ways, and it's unique. No, you know, nobody else is capturing this data at this level. So you know, let's not lose it. Let's make sure we do something with it. Sorry, Jo.
No, that's good. And it's also, it helps us when we're going into the meetings, or to pass this on to whoever is in those meetings, that they can take it and use it as a challenge to say, look, this is what parents are saying about your service. And these are the bits where the gaps are, or what's working well as well. Yeah.
And
so
pulling out the important bits and writing it into that process really is a great start. Okay.
So all the comments and experiences, and there were lots that were collected, have all been read by, there was a group of volunteer parent carers, and they were divided into themes and summarised and then shared across the group. So that's all been used as part of the narrative of the report. We've also included the parent carers' words within the report, and we've included as many as we could. And the key themes have all been recorded and all added to the report. So it's all in there, and I think that makes it more of a personal, and the emotion comes across a lot more. And again, all this is used, well, and will be used moving forward for next year.
The other thing that we did this year, which we hadn't done previously, because we were all aware of our own bias as well. You know, we've all got our own personal biases within all of this. So what we did this year that we hadn't done previously is to grab all of that data and all of those words, the rich text that you'd written to us, and we stuck it through AI after we'd done our analysis to see whether or not actually artificial intelligence came up with the same themes that we did. And they did, which was great. And it meant that it was, that side of it was that wasn't emotion, that was fact on what it was that you had written, and it clumped it all together. So that was a really different aspect of the data analysis that we did this year. Okay. These are, I've got a couple of these now, haven't I? So these are the words that you'd given us. These are, you know, emotional toll and waiting time. You know, these are the words that you had written that we've kind of captured. Really, they're not good, are they? You know, tired, anxious, need support, let down, overwhelmed. You know, We feel it. We absolutely do. Right, Jo, on to you. Sorry, I'll shut now.
Over to you on this one, I think.
So the conclusion that despite, you know, the best efforts to amplify voices, we are frustrated, you know, that co-production has kind of, the wheels have fallen off it over the last 2-year period. And we could see it happening as it was happening. And this gave us an opportunity now to kind of, as I keep saying, kind of hit that reset button and start again. So the recommendations that we have are to develop a new co-production charter. And that's across all areas. That's not just education, that's social care, that's health as well. Outline service level agreements with these accountability measures written in. So how, as like Jo's just gone through all of that data, how we weave that in now and make sure that there is positive movement, not that things are just standing still or regress, but there's positive movement in the parents' experiences. Ensure commitment to hearing parents' voices in decision making. I think that's, you know, absolute paramount to what it is that we do, and making sure that we're still at the top table. Agree upon terms of reference to the steering group, and that's not just kind of like our steering group. That's our steering group as in the PCF, but that's also a co-production kind of like steering group. And co-produce and implement the frequency of and review the co-production strategy, because there's no point having a strategy if it isn't used and implemented. And that's the bit that we've got one already, but we need to actually make sure that with change of personnel and that training is embedded within the health service and local authorities, so that it doesn't matter if there's a change of personnel, that everybody is committed to doing this. Culture change, I'm not going to go through line for line because I'm going to bat this over to Debbie and Helen to actually talk about the progress and the next stages that they're going to take for our recommendations and how they're going to actually implement it. You've seen, you've all seen this, and we will keep coming back to these recommendations and making sure they're actually implemented. We're at the early stages. You know, we need to put a lot of meat on the bone around this, and that's around timeframes, and that's around commitment with money. This is the first start of that process, and then we'll be moving on going forward. Okie dokie. Is there any questions in the chat for Jo or I? In terms of finding it and finding us, go to our website. The survey is on our website, and our website itself is pcfcheshirewest.org. All of our contact details are on there. Our, you know, phone number, email, Facebook, it's YouTube, it's all on there. So if anybody does need to get hold of us at any point, please just do get in contact with us.
There is a question in the chat, which I think is more for Helen or Debbie to answer.
Okay, well, hang on.
That.
Okay, I can't see anything at the moment.
Right.
I can only see my screen. So so hang on to that, and we'll ask Debbie and Helen. Thank you, Lucy. And then this is a communication that's been put together that some of you may have seen via school, but it's also gone through some of the council's processes too, just to try and, again, raise the profile, making sure that we're using the council's network, increasing that communication, working as a team. And when we get all of the dates for the coffee events and the forums, we'll be doing a flip side of this, and again asking the council to share it amongst the SEND network, obviously, that they hold information on. Okay, right, handing over to, I'm going to mute myself now. You'll all be very pleased to know you've heard enough from me. I'm going to now hand over to Helen and Debbie. If you could switch your cameras on, guys. I believe you're in the room, virtual room.
I'm switched on. Can you see and hear me, Julie?
I can see and hear you. And is Helen here too?
I'm not sure at this stage, sorry, but I'm happy to start.
Okay.
I am here. I can see all of you and I can see the presentation, and I'll let Debbie take the floor.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go on mute now. So just let me know in your best Christmassy voice when you'd like me to move through the slides.
Thank you, Julie. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting us both to be part of this meeting today. I think it's really challenging times that we're all in, all partners within the SEND process. We know there are challenges around the processes, about the system, both locally and nationally. And like yourselves, we are hopeful that we will see some additional funding or strategies to support the SEND agenda following any outcomes from tomorrow. I think it's worth sharing at this point. I think one vital piece of information that you may have not acknowledged, Julie, is when we do have our inspections, you know, the PCF are represented on those focus groups with inspectors. And that's another way to have your voices heard at a level above the local authority, really, in terms of sharing your concerns and recommendations and outcomes with inspectors as well, who will then include some of those, if appropriate, within their report and their development plans for us as a local authority. We know there are challenges. We know there are time frames that potentially are unrealistic at the moment in terms of responses to some of the challenges. So we do need to look at how our own systems within the change system and how we might be able to quicken and speed those up. So next slide, please, or first slide for myself, if you like. Obviously, your first recommendation, and we wouldn't disagree, is around the co-production charter and how that needs updating. We have allocated a lead officer from the council's change management team to lead for that for us in terms of that multi-agency group, which includes health partners as well. We also have a commitment from the DFE, the RISE team, and RISE stands for Research and Improvement for SEND Excellence. They are going to be providing some support in terms of the reviewing and renewing of the co-production strategy. And that team from RISE is made up of representatives from the National Children's Bureau, the Council for Disabled Children, and DFE representation, who have a lot of experience working with other authorities around the country on particular themes. The three themes they're going to be working with us on around the co-production refresh. They're also going to provide some Equality Act training for our schools to support the inclusion agenda, and also if there is capacity to look at our post-16 offer and how that might be improved. All of that work with the DFE is going to take place in both the autumn and the spring term of the next academic year. I think additional to the co-production charter, we are conscious that we perhaps don't capture the child's voice as well as much as we could. So we need to develop ways of capturing the young people's voice and how that contributes to decision making around strategy and decisions around young people. Okay, we know that we need to have greater transparency. Sorry, yes, I have explained the RISE acronym, I do apologise. We want to develop greater transparency around our decision making, and we want to look at how we can include parents and carers as and when it is appropriate to do that. And we'll go talk more about that when we get onto the communication slide. Okay, next slide, please. I'm not going to read through the slides. I'm just going to give you some enriched narrative as well, because you can obviously presume they'll get a copy of the slides, Julie, which they can read through at their leisure. So the second recommendation is around cultural change. We absolutely know that cultural change is required across all partnerships, schools, the local authority, children's social care, health partners. We need to develop a more inclusive approach where more of our young people can have their needs met in the right provision. And obviously, we need to equip our mainstream schools via an intense training program, so they are more skilled and able to meet the needs of a variety of special needs as and when it's appropriate for that young person. Okay, we launched our inclusion strategy last April. So again, we are working with our schools and our MATs and our SENCOs about how we can develop that inclusion process for our schools. And we also have developed an inclusion dashboard that we will be sharing with our schools so we can monitor the progress of that inclusion framework and how we hope to see significant changes in, for example, the number of exclusions for children, the number of children who are accessing mainstream potentially with an EHC plan, and how many requests for EHC plans that our mainstream schools are submitting. But also we want to develop what we call an ordinarily available provision offer that is consistent across all of our mainstreams. So again, we've commissioned an external partner to do that piece of work, and she's currently meeting with our schools, settings and SENCOs in order of what that might look like, so that we can make sure parents are aware of what level of response they can expect from a mainstream, from a resource provision, from a special school in relation to the needs of each individual child. Okay, we have committed to using the Live Well website in a more informative way to share updates with parents. So some of the things we are planning to do in the short term is putting up the dates of all the panels for the next academic year, what professionals sit on those panels, and provide regular updates in terms of where the local authority are at with our 20-week compliance. So that's the expectation that all plans will, once agreed, will be completed within that 20-week time frame. We know many authorities across the country are struggling with that. We are on an improving trajectory, but again, it would be good to share that with the wider parent group, so at least you have an awareness of where we are currently at. We've also committed to a piece of work with Just Libra in terms of, again, an external partner looking at our customer service experience and how that impacts on the well-being of all stakeholders. So that's yourselves as parent carers, that's our schools and settings staff, and obviously the well-being of our SEND team as well. There have been 3 task and finish groups first to start with, where the lead, Janet from Just Libra, has met with groups of parents and carers, groups of school staff and groups of the SEND team. Following the conclusion of those groups, she will then design a programme of work that we hope to start delivering from the new academic year, with a view that hopefully we can improve the service that many of us are experiencing at the moment. I think it'd be worth saying here at the moment, one of the key areas that is impacting on the service offer currently is that the demand is doubled in recent years, and there has been a lack of increase in provision to match that demand, but also a lack of increase in the size of the SEND team and other partners to respond to that increased demand. There are plans in place for both of those issues to be addressed. So only on Friday we had approval from the council's SEND Capital Board to increase our resource provisions and special school places by up to 93 places in the next academic year, and that is part of a 3-year plan. So that's phase 1 of a 3-year plan to increase the provision within our borough to prevent young people having to travel out of borough, or in some cases be placed in the wrong type of setting whilst they are awaiting a place in an appropriate setting.
Debbie, can I just come in on that? I think it's really important that we're clear that we're trying to do that as best we can, but sometimes footprints of schools limits that in areas. So we've got to really kind of think carefully about how we do it and where we do it, and making sure we get a balance across the footprint that responds to an increasing need for special school provision, but also that increased provision within mainstream settings as well. So great that we've got that approval for the next year, and we'll be starting, or we're already in a process of looking at what we might have for the following school year as well.
Thanks, Helen. We've also commissioned a further partner to look at our inclusive practices and how we might improve the systems within the SEND team, as well as support the training for our SENCOs in schools in terms of being more inclusive in our mainstream schools. And again, it's where it's appropriate for individual children. Our special schools will tell us they believe they can identify some children who perhaps could have their needs met in a mainstream setting. But again, we have to look at every child individually and consider the professional's view, most importantly, the parent's view, and also capture the voice of the child where it's appropriate. I think we welcome the additional news that we have managed to increase our educational psychologist capacity for September. We will have 10.4 full-time EPs out of what we have as a capacity for 15. So we will continue to use the rest of that capacity by employing locums. So we will be up to full strength. And we have actually successfully recruited 3 trainees, which is a model of, we grow our own, who then stay with us into the future. And we've had our first successful trainee follow that pathway and will be joining as a fully qualified EP from September. We know the national challenges around educational psychologists. We have tried commissioning out to other services, which has provided some challenges, but we are hopeful that the educational psychologist team will be able to function more efficiently, more effectively, and hopefully return to doing some of the preventative work that they have done in the past. Next slide, please. Okay, your third recommendation from the PCF survey was around communication. We know as a local authority, communication is a major concern for our partners, parents, carers, and our schools. We are fully aware of the timeframes that we are currently undertaking in terms of responding to people, and hence we have done a review of our staffing structure, and we have identified areas where we think we need increased capacity, communication being one of them, and we are currently in the process of approving and recruiting what we are calling a navigator role. So it's somebody who can do that work with families to guide them through the system, provide them with updates and a whole host of other things that perhaps is causing the SEND officers to have to manage phone calls or email requests, and it will free up some of their time to complete their roles within the system in a much more timely way, which can only improve the service for our families and ultimately help the young people get access to the right education in the right setting at a much more acceptable pace. Okay, we've worked with our special schools. We've mentioned that we're going to use the LiveWell site for updates. I've worked with the special schools who are in the process of updating their individual school profiles on the LiveWell website, and they are obviously going to articulate what their offer in terms of school visits will be on each individual school's website, ready for September. We are looking at improvements to the hub because we know it can be quite clunky and it cannot be as helpful as some parents would like. So again, we're looking and listening to the parent-carer voice in terms of what improvements would help our families to access that in a more knowledgeable and informed way. We are looking at a number of work groups in the future in terms of involving not only our SENCOs in more strategic planning of things like the ordinarily available provision, but also we will continue to invite PCF reps to sit on all the work groups where it is appropriate, as they currently do on some, but not all. We are looking to share, again, via the LiveWell website, brief, regular updates on all the different strands of work that are going on within the SEND agenda. This is a major project that the council have committed to, not only from senior officers within the council, but we also have a cross-party members group who are very keen to support improvements within the SEND system as well. And I think Julie alluded to that earlier about being involved with some of those groups at a higher level as well. We want to involve young people, so currently having talks with a member of staff who is an experienced child author, and how we might produce a document, a booklet, a guide for the different age ranges of young people, for them to understand the EHCP process and what it might mean for them within a school environment in their lived experiences. We continue to work with the PCF and clearly respond and support any recommendations that come out of their biannual surveys. We have got our internal communications team currently meeting with us about what contributions they can make to support the changes in the system in terms of how we communicate with partners, how we might meet social media, how we might improve some of our letter writing, and anything along those lines. We're also looking, as we said, about that additional role as a navigator, we're calling it, but we're also looking at potential additional resource for the independent advice services, because again, they have increased demand due to the increased number of young people going through the SEND system. And then obviously we've committed to supporting the PCF to share any information with the wider SEND parent group to encourage them to support the PCF and work with us as a local authority in terms of providing us with that challenge and that voice and that feedback and that contribution to any new strategies or plans that we may have from the focus and the lens of the lived experience of the families and the young people. Thanks, Julie. Next slide. So, sorry, I've morphed 2 and 3 together, haven't I? I do apologise. Key pieces of work. So there we go. The one with the ICB about waiting well is obviously something we can contribute to. Waiting well usually refers to how families and young people are supported to wait while they are going to be accessing an appointment or an assessment or some sort of therapeutic input. We as an education service are working through our educational psychologists to provide training to our schools in terms of the ELSA programme, so that's the Emotional Literacy Support Assistant programme, the Mental Health First Aid for Schools programme, so how we can support staff in schools to support children whilst they are waiting for appointments. The next piece of work is obviously the preparation for adulthood. I think there's a joint appetite from the local authority and yourselves to produce and provide the wonderful event that we have done in previous years with all stakeholders there, including those post-16 and post-19 providers, in terms of what the offer is for our young people. And we have successfully piloted a supported internship programme, which again this year has been expanded with funding from the government, and we've had at least one young person where it has led to a full-time employment post for her following the supported internship programme. And then I've added there, we've already mentioned PCF reps on all groups, and then there is a commitment from ourselves to produce a plan of all the key pieces of work that we are going to undertake over the next academic year, and then to invite members of the PCF to support us with those pieces of work. I think I've covered everything there.
Okay, brilliant. Can I just hand over to one of my team to read out any of the questions in the chat? Again, I struggle, as soon as I go into it, I break
Should
it.
I go through the pre-submitted questions first?
Yeah,
That might
okay.
answer some of them.
Okie dokie, that's good. Have you got those questions there, or would you like me to read them out to you?
No, if you read them out and I'll provide a response. Okay.
Okay, what specific positive change has been implemented to respond to some of the concerns raised in both the CWaC Send Accountability and the PCF survey? Because from what we're seeing, parental experience remains worse than ever.
Okay, so I think I've covered most of the answers to that within the 4 slides that I've just shared. Obviously, customer experience is key, hence the commissioned work. It's about the involvement of parents and carers in some of those work groups to capture those lived experiences more than we have done perhaps in the past. And then it's about that sufficiency and demand, and in terms of requests, and obviously the capacity of the team to respond, which again we're hoping to increase.
Okay, and we've got a specific question here
Julie,
about.
Julie,
Sorry,
can I just come in there? Because I think that, you know, whether it's right or wrong, there are processes, and unfortunately there is some bureaucracy within local authority, the local authority. So it would be amazing if I could just magic up funds to immediately, you know, increase the size of the team as a short-term issue. It doesn't work like that. So unfortunately, I have to go to our budget, through a budget process, and put a business case together, and, you know, tweak and amend that at times. So there is some of that I think is frustrating for everybody, people on the call, for us as a group, to, you know, manage and help the flow of communication become improved. There's also a lot of challenge that Debbie and I are giving in terms of some of the communication, and where we can, trying to step in to help with that flow and mobilize and push things forward behind the scenes. I think that we have a huge amount of email traffic that comes into the team, and everybody can appreciate that, with, you know, 3,000 plus families needing support at very different stages. There is a huge amount of email traffic. We've spoken with some of our parents that are here around trying to craft that family liaison officer job or navigator role, somebody that can help to support families to navigate their way through what is a really complex system. We're trying to work with our colleagues as well, because although it may appear that all delays sit with the local authority, sometimes some of the delays in being able to progress things through sit outside of us. And that might require our staff to be pushing and pushing with partners, not parents, to try and get responses received back to us so we can progress things. It might require us to...
You mean health partners? Yeah, so it could be that you need a SALT report submitted.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Or it could be from the school, to be fair, as well. It could be around schools returning information to us. So, you know, one of the things is from the kind of restructure that we're looking at is around how we help them to understand that they have deadlines that they need to try and stick to as well. So really trying to move that. I committed in a recent meeting that we would review the structure. We have some ideas around what that structure should look like. We are hoping to be able to get financial approval to that. And we've started to go through that process. But I think fundamentally what I've also heard from our parents is that it's not just about having additional staff. It's about trying to navigate a way through making sure that both the SEND team, but the broader system of staff communicate more effectively. And the focus group work will help with some of that. And then the co-production work will also help with that. So the co-production, the review of that co-production charter and our current strategy, the proposals around having parental involvement in crafting some of the templates, some of the letters, so creating some template letters that can be used that take a more empathetic approach. All of that I think will help, and I'm hoping that co-production work can start really, really quickly and that we can get involvement. And I know that doesn't answer all the timeline questions, but I hope that there is an acceptance that we aren't sitting still on all of this. I wanted to make sure that we got the RISE work from the DFE involved and wrapped up in that. So we're reliant on the Department for Education giving us time to have those discussions and to agree to be part of our co-production work. We wanted to secure additional resource from outside of the SEND team, so that was somebody else leading on that co-production from elsewhere in the organisation who's been involved in a whole range of co-production opportunities previously, with our poverty truth advisors, with those with lived experiences, with our violence against women and girls work, and use her as a resource that sits slightly outside of the SEND team. So we're trying to progress all of that, and I feel that we are doing it, but I appreciate that sometimes that doesn't feel like it's quick enough outside of the local authority. So I just wanted to come in with that.
Just to update people as well, that Lucy and I met with the lady Catherine on, that was the first meeting of that co-production, happened on Monday. And we fed in from a PCF point of view what it was that we want and how it's going to work, and making sure that the governance structure of all of this co-production work and everything that we're doing here, everything that we're asking, and all of that data that we've collected, that's actually going to sit at the highest levels. And I think in the meeting that you alluded to, Helen, there was commitment right from the top that that all of this data that we were collecting was going to be fed through to the Children's Trust and make sure it goes through to the actual. There's no point it happening. It can't happen at the PCF level. It can't even happen at Debbie's level. With all due respect, it needs to go right the way through, and commitment needs to be given right to the top of the council. And that's the difference, I believe, that's happened over the last 6 to 12 months, is there is that commitment to doing it at the highest level, which hasn't always been there in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that commitment is there now.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't stop so that's great, and that's all really strategic, but feet on the ground, parents sat there waiting for responses from the SEND team. How are you going to deal with that? That's the bit that actually that's all strategic stuff is brilliant, and that needs to happen, but boots on the ground and answering emails and getting back to parents is what they need to know the answers to. So how are you going to deal with that? How are you going to get through that backlog? How are you going to make sure that parents are responded to, or at least know how long it's going to take a response to happen?
And that's where the navigator or the family liaison officer, whatever title we're going to give it, they will be that live person working with some of those families who are stuck and waiting on responses to communications. So we are planning on that additional resource once we get approval, and obviously we can share the progress of that programme, as well as other posts, so additional plan writers, additional SENOs, all the people who are involved in the process and support families and settings. If we can reduce people's workloads, that's going to improve the offer to our families, really.
I think what our families would like to know, and this is something that we need to get better at communicating as a group, is okay, so what realistically is the timeframe currently That's going to take time. You've already told us that's going to take time.
Yeah.
So what is the current response rate, and how do we make sure that we communicate and that's a realistic current response rate? How do we do all that? Those are the things that people want to know now, I think.
And that's what we are committing to publishing on the website. So obviously the council have a council-wide policy in terms of response times, which may not fit in with the expectations of families. So we need to review that and be more realistic in terms of what the response times that we can manage. And again, share that on regular updates with the wider parent group, so they are aware of what our current response times are, current completion rate timescales are, how many, potentially how many plans are outside of the 20-week time frame, just to be transparent and be that open and accountable to the parent groups, really.
Absolutely, because none of them are unreasonable. They just need to know. So you tell if it's not 3 days and it's 3 weeks, and then you've got to commit to doing the 3 weeks. That's what we say.
Julie, the other thing that I'm doing and have been doing over the last few weeks is looking at some individual cases and asking for chronologies of the teams in terms of how many emails have been sent, how many phone calls have been delivered, to just try and get a picture of the variance that we've got and how does that. So it's a bit of auditing from my perspective as well.
Okay, brilliant. Right, I'm just very conscious of time, and I'm sure there's a few questions in the chat. So
I haven't got through all the pre-submitted ones, so if I can very quickly do why are children just left. That's probably the longest response, Julie, and then the others are quite short. Okay. Obviously, because of the demand and supply position and the request for potentially special school places, we do try to work with families about what is in the interests of the child. We can't create special school places quickly. We are on that journey within our own footprint. Even external to the borough, special school places are full and over capacity. So what we try to do is work with the family and school, if it is appropriate for that young person to remain in their current setting while we consult and find the right setting they need to move to, we will do that. If that's not suitable for the young person for lots of reasons, then obviously we would look to put in packages, alternative packages for young people that are appropriate for their needs and what they can access at that moment in time. We don't always get it right because, again, supply agencies for tutoring, etc., are also under a significant demand at the moment. I think it's key to point out here that the SEND team often consult with between 15 plus settings to try and find a place that can meet the needs of individual young people. 15 settings takes an awful long time. We are aware that some children are waiting longer than we would like them to for their new setting to move to. So again, that's a piece of work that we currently need to work on.
Okay.
There's third question
about Greenbank residential. There's a question as well about can we ask about the residential funding, including Greenbank specialist provision? Where are we at with that?
Yeah, so it's currently at review stage. We've engaged with parents, schools and settings. It will be going to the management board before the end of July for a decision on next steps, which we will then communicate with schools, and that we also communicate with parents via the schools. Okay, and then the last one was about the action plan with timeframes, if I'm right, Julie. Yeah. So we have just finalised updating the SEND strategy and action plan, which is a multi-agency document that health, social care and other partners can contribute to. I know PCF reps are on those groups. We are waiting for the outcomes of some commissioned work from Penny Richardson about the inclusion agenda and how we can support schools further to improve their inclusive practice, but also our own systems that require improvement. Her recommendations are due out this month. We will then make sure they're included in the action plan and the strategy alongside the PCF recommendations, most recent SEND inspection recommendations, and the new SEND and AP framework measures. And then we will go through the governance process, and then it will be published on the children's website. So again, we are hoping.
And is that part of the, is that part of the scrutiny process? Where does that fit in with the scrutiny process within the council? So
can I
yes,
Helen, come in on that?
Explain to us all, because it's complicated.
It's really complicated. So there was a motion at full council that many of you will have seen. Adam, as the lead member, is now putting together a paper that will go to Cabinet, which is based on 2 motions that he's done in full council. One was around kind of a bit of a state of the nation in relation to children and family services, the whole gambit of children and family services. And from that, he wanted to set up a task and finish group, cross-party task and finish group, to look in its entirety at children and families. He then went to Cabinet just before we went into pre-election period around the notion of an inclusive borough. And as part of that, wanted to, which will be included in his paper that goes to Cabinet at the end of July for approval from that Cabinet to set up that cross-party task and finish group. It will also reference a request to people's overview and scrutiny, and a suggestion. The suggestion may not be, the report will reference the fact that there will be some scrutiny of SEND as part of overview and scrutiny. He has to get support from the shadow council, shadow portfolio holder, Adrian Waddlove, to progress with that, because they jointly need to own some of that. They will then have a conversation with the People's Overview and Scrutiny Chair and schedule some SEND scrutiny. So that can take various different guises, different types of scrutiny. Panels do different bits, in very different ways. But I think that Adam is very much committed to those being specific areas of scrutiny linked to the SEND strategic action plan. So the action plan that has been about for a significant amount of time, which was closed down in the SEND strategy group in terms of looking at the Q4 performance, and is being rewritten for the following year, taking on board everything that Debbie has referenced. Those tasks, that task and finish groups, or my suggestion to Adam is that they establish some task and finish groups related with people who are involved with SEND to come along to and to give their lived experience on specific areas. They will need to chunk it down. SEND as a whole is going to be too big to do a scrutiny session on. So they will need to break that down into specific areas. So that could be around customer satisfaction. It could be related to compliance rates. It could be related to sufficiency. And each of those task and finish groups would look at what's identified within the SEND strategic action plan in relation to that area, what actions and activity need to take place, and have those things been successful in improving the position? Are they the right things to have in there? Should there be something else? And then at the end of that task and finish group, that group led by the elected members, remember scrutiny is an elected member function within the constitution, but they can engage residents in being part of that. It will then be the scrutiny members' responsibility to make recommendations back to people's scrutiny. And that could range from 10 recommendations to 100 recommendations, but these are about strategic recommendations linked to SEND. They may also flag up some areas of positivity. They may also flag up areas that they might believe need to filter through to health scrutiny or be highlighted to the Health and Wellbeing Board. So there's kind of a whole range of routes that could then morph into. But the important thing is that was absolutely an outcome from council, that there should be some scrutiny related to send. There is an approval process outlined very clearly within the council constitution. Adam is following that by taking a paper back to cabinet with the proposals around the various motions that have been approved during, unfortunately, 2 pre-election periods that have virtually run back to back. So it's not about any delaying tactics. It's about what is very clearly defined within any constitution, but there is work going on behind the scenes to make sure that we can progress that as soon as we can when we get out of the election process.
And indeed, Adam was invited to this meeting but couldn't come because obviously we've got a general election tomorrow. So we will put him and schedule him on to come to one of the early meetings in the new year. I'm just now, I've not shared my screen. I'm able to see some of the questions, and a lot of the questions are around timeframes. So we will be able to give a better update with regards to that as soon as we're out of this election period. You're getting a bit of a kick in about, you know, not replying to emails, and you just need to do better. You know, it needs to be better, and you need to communicate, you know, how much time it is actually going to take. We have got some questions in the chat. I'm not going to go into any personal questions. It's not the right forum to share it. This has been recorded. But there are some questions about exclusions to EHCPs from professional reports. There's a couple of questions in there about why is that happening? Is that happening? And, you know, what is your response to that? Why should there, and why is there exclusions to professionals' reports?
Okay, so obviously with better sufficiency within the council, we would obviously have our own ICB reports, we would have our own EP reports. I think you're talking about independent reports potentially, Julie.
It doesn't state independent reports, okay. So let's do it as all reports, because both should be included. So
yeah, and we do acknowledge independent reports. What we do acknowledge is the code is very clear that we don't have to include professionals' reports in their entirety to a new plan or an updated plan. They can be attached as an appendix. So again, the writers and the caseworkers are trained to pick out the relevant sections of the report that are pertinent to the young person at that particular moment in time. As we all know, objectives within a plan can be reviewed and renewed on the annual review basis. So then we would revisit the most recent professionals report or commission new ones if we felt those objectives need updating, is the short answer to that question.
Okay, and I think I would encourage anybody on the call to come and be part of the IS's coffee events about what can be included in a report and what can't be included in a report, or what sufficiency is, what relevance is, and all that kind of stuff, so that you can understand from a parent's perspective what you can push for and what needs to be included. We're also running the training course about send legislation. So again, come along and learn more and find out, because I know, I'll just use Josh as an example. Poor Josh is always using an example. You know, when he started primary school, he had an educational psychologist report that was still relevant to year 5. He didn't need one every year. That was still relevant at year 5. But then when he was transitioning to high school, he needed another one. So it's about what's the relevance and whether or not things have actually changed. So please do, I encourage everybody to come and you know, upskill yourselves as well in terms of what that process is.
And we can include some advice on that through the mock panel, if that would help, from the professionals who will be part of those panels. I
think that would be brilliant, yeah. Team, can you just tell me whether or not I've missed any other major bits that people are asking? Because it's if you can jump in if I've missed anything out. I am conscious of time. I'm usually pretty good. I usually keep to time pretty much, but I am 15 minutes over.
There is a question about cancelled panel dates and whether they will be published too.
Absolutely, we can keep the updates on the Live Well website as live as we possibly can. Happy to do that.
And I think, you know, it'd be good for you guys to keep us updated on that, because we can put a post out on social media that will perhaps reach the families that aren't going to go and have a look on the Live Well website. So again, as part of this communication review, if you keep us updated, as I say, we can share things instantly. So families are finding it through our channels as well. Okay. Okay. One that has just come in is timescales for communications improvements, please. What are the quick hits? What are the plans in terms of the initial communication difficulties that we have?
Okay, clearly we are looking at a range of strategies and we'll progress those over the summer. There are some very quick wins in terms of the website and those other quick communication tools that we can do ready for September. The Just Libra work will obviously take some time to do any appropriate training and disseminate that. So without being over committed, I think hopefully over the autumn term, we should start to see improvements in the response times and the communication strategies between not only ourselves as a local authority, but obviously there are elements where we have no control over our health partners' response times, and sometimes we are dependent on them.
Jules, can I come in there? Sorry. So the other bit for me is we've already got our comms team trying to work on updating and refreshing. The council website isn't brilliant. We know that Live Well isn't brilliant, but it's the commission that we have, and we've got another we've certainly got another 12 months before that can be re-procured. So, you know, we have to work with what we've got. But we have got our comms team working on suggestions and ideas at the moment. Again, I would be expecting those to be coming to your co-production, you know, falling into that for some sharing of ideas. No, that's rubbish. Yes, that's a great idea. Oh, by the way, have you looked at X? Because a friend of mine who's got a child with special needs down in Dorset has told me about this amazing thing that they've got on. So any feedback like that, just bring it into the fold. I think the other bit for me that I know I've asked our ICT department to be looking at is, are we utilising every capability of the hub currently? Are there other things that we could be switching on? Sorry, I'm not very techy, but is there anything that we haven't got switched on that if we had switched on would help and aid the communication through to parents around what's happening? So they get an automatic email, so they get that information shared with them rather than being reliant on a member of staff. So a single point of failure, not being able to give them the messages that they need. So we're trying to look at that.
Okay.
And I've got that on board. Again, I'm really sorry. I feel like I'm not giving you any time scales, but all of this is going on in the background. I have to say the local authority have just been going through a massive migration. So my ICT services have been a little bit distracted by that, but that's nearly done. So, you know, they know that this is imperative and that we need them to be having a look at this, given that it's ICT, not the education team, who procure the hub.
Okay. Listen, guys, I'm conscious of time now. I think this could keep on going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to download all of the chats that we've got, and if there is anything that we've missed as outstanding, we'll send it through to you guys. And then if you wouldn't mind sending us a response back, and we can include that on the communication that goes out afterwards. So all that's left to say is thank you very much indeed for all of the parents for being so engaged. Thank you to all the PCF reps, and thank you to Debbie and Helen for coming along and giving us an update of how our voices will be heard going forward, and how we can make that all work seamlessly, let's hope, and accountable, make some positive change for the next generation as well. So thank you, everybody.